So first of all, I just want to welcome everyone to our first EF Gap Year virtual alumni panel. New times today, and we're so happy to have our alumni here with us tonight, a few of them to tell you a bit about their experiences. Also just so excited to have all of you signed up for our program leaving this fall. So everyone on this webinar tonight is departing this September with our programs, either the fall semester or our gap year. So we're so excited to welcome you into the program and hear your questions tonight. We'll have time to get through everyone's questions, so no worry. We'll stay and answer every last question that we need to. And as you can see, we have 3 amazing alumni joining us that have come from different programs over the years. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to quickly go through a couple Zoom etiquette here. I mentioned first off, for those of you that joined a few minutes ago, that everyone is set to mute. So we can't hear you. So don't worry about any background noise, pets, kids, whatever it may be. And that's more to just keep the noise to a minimum. The panelists here and myself obviously will be speaking, and we can open it up to live questions later. Speaking of questions, we want to hear all of yours. The alumni are excited to answer them. So please, if anything comes to mind, there's a Q&A little kind of thought bubble that you can click on and enter questions. Enter them throughout the webinar. It doesn't matter if someone's in the middle of speaking, we'll get to them. But of course, anytime something's top of mind, we want to make sure you get it out so you don't forget your questions. And throughout the webinar, we'll either answer them as we go, and then after our alumni say a few words, we'll then get to everyone's questions, kind of open it up for a full Q&A. So again, that's super important to just make sure you're typing in your questions there. I also have my colleague Rebecca on the line. You can't see her face, but she might be answering some of your questions, typing back to you. If it's something she can answer immediately for you, that's helpful. So you may hear from her. All right, so without further ado, I do want to introduce our EF Gap Year alumni that we have on the call tonight. First off, we have Lanie Burak, who was one of our very first Gap Year class of 2019. So our first year, it kicked off in the fall of 2018, and she did the full year program. Lanie is from Massachusetts. She actually just told us that she drove down this weekend to a family's condo in North Carolina. Oh. So she's joining us today from North Carolina, but is a Massachusetts native like myself. And you can see here on the screen, she did her custom modules in Spanish in Costa Rica and Tamarindo. She did service learning in Thailand, and then her internship in Dublin. Jenna, we have also on the call. Jenna completed her fall semester last fall, so finished the program last December. And Jenna is coming from us live from Bozeman, Montana tonight, which is where she lives also. And Jenna did her language study in Paris. She did French in Paris, and then she did an internship in Sydney. She has a kind of a fun, cool story with that as well. And then we have Tayson Amos, who is joining us from Oregon. Tayson just finished his gap year, so also was on the road during the beginning of Corona and all those wild times that we're all aware of now. So had to come home a bit early. But Tayson did his language study in Barcelona, service learning in Costa Rica, and his internship in Madrid. So I want to thank our 3 alumni for joining us, and I'm going to kick it off just with some questions for them so you can hear a little bit background of why they even come to the decision to take a gap year, and some lessons and learnings that they gained from their experience. And then, like I said, jump in with your questions throughout. So we'll just kick it off starting with, why did you decide to take a gap year semester? And I'm going to throw it over to Lanie to take this one to start.
I originally graduated high school in 2018, and at the time had been accepted to colleges. I applied, was trying to decide where I wanted to go, what I wanted to study, wasn't 100% sure. So I was applying to gap years as well, and ended up finding a college I loved, and it was Samford in like the middle of Alabama, and I just wasn't sure, but I ended up deferring there and choosing to do the gap year because I just wanted something different. I kind of struggled with anxiety throughout high school. I was burnt out. I didn't know what I wanted to study, and I just thought it was a really great, like, once in a lifetime opportunity to do this. Like, I was like, well, I could go straight to college and travel after college, but then the gap year program was just so amazing. It had everything I wanted to do with the language, internship, service, and so I just decided to defer and then ended up reapplying to colleges on my trip, but that's why I decided to take a gap year.
Awesome. Thank you, Lanie. And how about you, Jenna?
My story, I guess, is pretty similar to Lanie's. I was super burnt out after graduating high school. I just felt like I really needed a break, and I applied to a bunch of schools, and when it came to making my decision finally on what I wanted to do, I was like, none of these feel right, like none of these feel like, I guess, a calling of sorts. And so I was Googling like things to do on a gap year, and I stumbled across EF, and then eventually applied and got in, and I was like, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. And yeah, I think it was a very good decision on my part. So
Awesome. Thank you. And Tayson, how about you?
So when I decided to apply, it was really unexpected for me. So I had a lot of pressure to go to college from just school and like family. And eventually like the college search got really depressing after a while, especially because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go. So eventually when I did encounter EF gap year, it just seemed like the obvious choice. It seemed like what I was looking for, and it ended up being perfect. So I was lucky to be able to apply.
Cool. So we'll get back to that a little bit. I want to talk about, from each of you here, how did your gap experience affect you? How did you change? Like, how do you think you've grown? Lanie, do you want to start with that one again?
Yeah. Geez, there's so much to talk about. I mean, the experience is incredible, and you gain so many skills, but I think specifically, I gained so much confidence in myself and just like a sense of capability. Like at some points you're like living alone with your internship, and you're learning how to take care of your belongings and get around new cities. And so that was really impactful. I learned like a lot of independence, and also like kind of understanding what I want for my future and what I know I'm capable of, and putting those together. And that helped me kind of like get ready for college and decide what I wanted for college, as well as like learn to advocate for myself. That was a really big one. So I think a lot of people have fear of asking for what you want. So that's kind of something new I experienced. So it's just like exploring passions, and that's just something that you're able to do on the gap year, which is really amazing.
Yes, it's been so fun. I can speak to seeing our students like from the beginning of their program to the end. And I remember obviously Lanie, you from day one until the end, and then figuring out where you were going to college and that whole journey. It's been, I mean, for the staff, it's incredible for us to see. Jenna, how about you? How did you feel like you changed? How did you grow?
yeah, I definitely would say that like confidence and independence are like the two words that come to mind. Just because you're thrown into so many situations that kind of force you to like advocate for yourself, and again just kind of be your own person. But I think the biggest thing is like I found my sense of self, I guess, like because before this I had a lot of pressure to go to school and just kind of do the typical routine, but after this I definitely have felt more confident in like, I guess if I don't go to school or I don't choose that typical sort of path, then like I know I'll be okay, because I guess I've learned to really just trust like that sort of process. And it's definitely helped me kind of figure out like who I am a lot more, and my passions and different things that I want to gravitate towards, for sure.
Cool. Amazing. And Tayson, how about you?
So the best way I could put it was when I did get back for Christmas break, and that was only halfway through. somebody told me, you look like you know what to do with your hands now, in the sense that like before I was really like awkward and I didn't, but coming home I was like a lot more self-assured. And so I think everybody around me noticed a difference. And I mean, I feel more self-reliant, even in ways that I didn't know I wasn't before.
I've never heard that expressed, like it's said that way, but that's so true. I think Jenna and Lanie, you too, do you think people notice that you carried yourself differently or you acted more mature? That's something we hear a lot from like parents or friends of students saying their friends said that about them. Yeah, I get head nodding. Okay, so this one I think kind of goes along with that, Tayson, but have you noticed differences between you and your peers? And I know, so you guys are at different stages, obviously. Tayson, you just got back. Jenna, you've been taking your second semester as a ski instructor in Bozeman. And obviously, Lanie, you went to school, so you've been at college for the last year. How have you noticed the differences between you and your peers? Maybe you have the most experience with that because you've been a freshman on campus. What's that been like for you?
Honestly, it's been pretty difficult. I think it's a different adjustment than you're adjusting to your gap year because you're going through it with everyone that's in new places, foreign places. And so the gap year adjustment is very different than going to college. And for me, I wanted a college that was new to me and I thought would be kind of more diverse because it's a big school. It ended up being a lot of people from the area and from like neighboring states. So I went all the way to University of Oregon, to the complete opposite coast. It's like a great environment, but you definitely, coming from your gap year, have much more of a global mindset and you can think critically and there is a sense of maturity and being able to see different perspectives and even craving different perspectives. So it has been hard, even just being older than some of my peers and my friends. But it is nice to have those skills because I adjusted easier and I was able to put myself out there and get involved in things that I wouldn't have been involved with before. Like I'm in Army ROTC and I rushed a sorority. So it's just like nice to have more confidence and skills going into college. But you definitely, like, I talk to my cohort all the time because they can really relate to the issues and like of going to college after the gap year and being like in the same spot, like education wise and like new place, but they also can relate to like feeling like an outsider and feeling like you don't belong or even not wanting to go back to school after traveling. So it's an experience.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of different things. Do you think, it sounds like in some ways you feel like you've been able to take advantage of more that's there on campus, just having kind of that different mindset now?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely feel more adjusted and comfortable with the uncomfortable. Like it's familiar to be in a new place with new people and different people. So that's really comforting, but it is hard being the same as everyone and being different.
Yeah, fair point for sure. How about you, Jenna? Anything to comment on there?
Yeah, I guess obviously since I am not like in school or anything, my experiences like has been a little different, but I do work primarily with a lot of like college kids like at my ski hill, and I have noticed that for me definitely a different sense of maturity, especially when it comes to like my friends that are in college. Like I've noticed that there, and also I feel a lot more open-minded and kind of awake to like I guess what is going on in the world and like how to I guess feel towards certain things, and I feel like my adjustment ability, like my ability to adjust towards different new situations definitely has improved quite a bit, which I think going forward into whatever I decide to do in the fall is definitely going to help quite a bit. So I think that sort of sense compared to like my friends and coworkers has definitely been like the biggest difference that I've noticed for sure.
Yeah. So along similar lines, and some of that with what Lanie's saying of like being adaptable, able to adjust. What about you, Tayson? I know you just got home, but I'm sure you've been catching up with your friends throughout, right?
Yeah. So I haven't been to college yet, but everyone that I've seen come home and is in college or has been to college, there's definitely, I think, just a difference in maybe like my aspirations versus theirs. Like I feel like I see the direction I'm heading differently because I feel like before the gap year, that's where I was heading, obviously. Like it was kind of more of like just a straight line, but after taking the gap year now, it's kind of opened my eyes to just so many different things I could do, and I don't feel the need to just follow one set rule.
Yeah, I love that. My last question for the three of you, and then we're just going to open it up for any questions for anyone on the call. So get your questions ready for everyone attending. But my last question is, what is one piece of advice you have for those about to head out on, this fall, heading out on a gap year, gap semester? What's your advice? Jenna, let's start with you.
Oh man, I would say my biggest piece of advice is like, I guess be super open-minded and don't necessarily have a preconceived idea of what is going to happen. Because I went into this thinking like, I don't know, I guess I went into it having expectations for how things were going to run and like who I was going to meet along the way and stuff. And when I actually got into the process of like being on my gap, I completely blew those out of the water. And I think just being open-minded like lets you meet so many new people and have all these experiences and kind of throw yourself out there into, I guess, different situations that you might not have otherwise tried. So definitely open-mindedness and not setting expectations super high or having like a notion of how things are going to go going into it for sure.
Awesome. What about you, Lanie?
I think similar to what Jenna was saying, but just like letting go of the perfection and like just knowing it's not going to run super smoothly. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be in situations that you don't necessarily want to be in or thought you were going to be in, but it's going to push you, and that's where you're going to grow the most, and you're going to realize like how resilient you are and how capable you are, and that's something to carry with you. So I think just like being open-minded to your abilities and having confidence in yourself, and even if it's not 100%, like carrying that with you, it's going to help you grow and solidify those feelings.
Amazing. And Tayson?
So I had a friend on my gap year who would always be saying, all experience is good experience. And I feel like that's exactly the perfect attitude to have going into the gap year, because you're going to be traveling. It's not always going to be perfect, but like you have to do your best to make the best out of every situation. But then also, it goes by so fast. And so like every moment you need to be like, it's draining, but every moment is like, you have to live it to its fullest because it flashes by.
It's so true. I think people look back and they're like, each time, especially as modules are coming to an end, you're like, oh my gosh, it's my last week living in Barcelona. I still want to go see this. I want to try this. It does go by fast. I think all of you that, or at least Jenna and Lanie, the advice, we get this a lot of like don't set kind of these expectations, and that you think you've all alluded to this is like, there are ups and downs, and it's for, either 12 weeks or 25 weeks. Not every single day is going to be the best day of your life, but it's so interesting because we have a lot of students that will say, I know during that time that I was homesick or this and that, like that was actually when I grew the most, because I pushed through and I realized what I'm capable of. So it's always those really like powerful moments that you can look back on and be proud of yourself for. Cool. We're gonna take some questions here. So let's see. Okay, awesome. Questions coming in. So first one we have from Jessica. How safe did you feel, and what could you do if you didn't feel safe? Who wants to take this?
I guess I will. So I was in Paris for my language module, and my host family was they were in like obviously a good part of Paris, but it was like, I guess, a poorer district, so it was a little sketchy at times. Um, and so I never like went out super late at night, especially taking the metro, walking home, different things like that. If I did, I would always Uber. Or I would have my friend David actually lived in the same apartment complex, so him and I would walk home together, which was nice. Um, and then I guess part of it is just really being aware of your surroundings, knowing where you're at, making sure your phone is charged, knowing how to get back to like your house or whatever, and always traveling in groups, especially for girls. I know that's like a big thing. But yeah, and I guess like I know that like you can't avoid completely not putting yourself in unsafe situations, but definitely be aware of like where you're going and kind of read the room before you are put into something that you don't want to be. But yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenna. That one's so important. And we actually, I think, since one of the newest things we added to our orientation is a new session on just being street smart. Because I mean, a lot of our travelers are, you grow up in smaller towns, or you've always had people looking out for you, and being in big cities, that's a reality of you have to be more cautious. And so, I mean, those rules of like never traveling alone, things like that. I mean, that's the reality. And being extra cautious at night and stuff like that. But yeah, super important. Also from Jessica, another one, what would you guys do if you got sick or needed help? Lanie, do you want to take this one?
Yes. Yeah, EF is very, very organized. They have people all over in every country you could ever possibly need. There's hotlines. There's just like you'll probably have numbers that you can call like of your people in your country as well as like people back in Boston. But I experienced a couple health issues throughout the year, and I always had someone with me for emotional support, for translation, with me at a hospital if I needed it. I actually went home at one point. EF got me home. They're very good at like getting you what you need and communicating with you. And as long as you're in contact with them and you're keeping them updated, like you're going to get whatever support you need, which is really awesome.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Said it perfectly. Everyone has numbers wherever they'll be, and also our 24/7 support line. So, from anything ranging to, I have a cold, should I see a doctor, to I tripped and broke my leg. There's a variety, obviously, of scenarios, but we're always going to be there to help. Oh, what was your favorite memory from your gap? Who wants to take that? Maybe we'll take a few. Maybe you each can answer that one. That's a tough one. I know that's tough. He's one of your top favorites.
I mean, I can answer. I don't know. It's so hard to choose that, because I think at one point during my gap year, or at many points during my gap year, I've said each module was my favorite. Like I would finish one and I'd be like, oh, that one was so good. And then the next one would be perfect. But my favorite time was definitely service in Costa Rica. Towards the end, we went to a part of Costa Rica, La Fortuna, and we saw waterfalls, and we did kayaking, and we did the pools that are like hot. I forgot the name, but all in one day, and it was just a perfect day. So that was one of my favorite memories.
Love that. How about you, Jenna?
So many. I would definitely say my favorite part of my experience was like Australia, just because I was more in my element. I'm a very independent person, so like living in my own apartment and cooking for myself was super nice, but I also met like a super solid group of like locals, and they showed me around all of Sydney, and then some of like the like outskirts of Sydney and like the beaches and stuff. And so we went on a weekend away together, which was super fun. And yeah, I think just like all those memories associated with like the people that I met, for sure.
Awesome. And how about you, Lanie?
I think Thailand was really special for me. So many like cultural experiences. I mean, I'm adopted from South Korea, so it was my first time back in Asia, um, and that was kind of a shock. It was really uncomfortable, but a really good growing experience. But as well as just like the program we did with EF was really amazing. Like we took a Thai cooking class, and we did some conservation of land, and we worked with elephants. We taught English, so we were really really involved with the culture and the people, and it was mutual learning, like service learning, learning from each other and integrating the cultures, and it was really awesome.
Thank you. This one I'm going to throw to you, Lanie, because it's, what was the internship in Dublin like?
Dublin was amazing. It's such a cool city. It's very, very friendly. It's very safe, very manageable to get around with transportation. And my internship was in the city center, so I had lunch breaks that were like longer, about an hour. So I would go walk to the free museums that are all around the city, and it's very inclusive. It's not huge, and so you get to learn the city, which is very cool. As well as my internship, I did a with a nonprofit called Fighting Blindness in Dublin, and the people were awesome. They really let me get involved with building their website and coming up with advertising and like campaigns, and I was doing like what's it called? I was answering phones and working with fundraising and research. It's very like the people in Ireland in general, and like any internship you're going to have, want you to be involved and want you to learn, and it's just incredible.
Great. Dublin, obviously a great city. I noticed we had some other questions about internships, so maybe we'll just have right now, Jenna, you also talk about your internship, and then Taysom will go to you as well.
Okay, yeah. So I obviously I interned in Sydney, and I interned for a social media company called LNA Social Media, and they're kind of a pretty big deal, which I wasn't expecting going into it, but it was super. I got to do a lot of like Instagram designing for like Ocean Spray and Ferrari and like a bunch of big companies, and then I actually got to model for a few like local Australian like skincare brands, which was pretty fun. So a lot of beach days with like my coworkers, just like taking pictures pretty much. And yeah, everyone I worked with was super, super nice. And obviously I know nothing about like social media marketing going into it. And it was super, like a very much adaptable situation, because I was just kind of thrown tasks, and everyone was super helpful about teaching me what I needed to know. And yeah, it was a really fun time.
Great. I know you have some epic Sydney stories, and that the company you work for is so cool. And then just living in Sydney, you want to talk a little bit about that? You talked a bit about like your independence, you like that, but yeah, what was that? How's the commute like? Like, what are those types of things?
Yeah. So Sydney is a bit different from like Europe in the sense of like there's not like a train or a metro. It's all by bus pretty much. So everything's pretty spread out also, which was kind of a pain at some times, but for the most part the commute was super easy. The bus transportation, once you get the hang of it, super easy to get around. And Sydney is like one of the cleanest, nicest cities I've ever been to, I thought, at least. And it also is like very safe feeling. So like if I was walking home at certain hours, like I never felt unsafe. And then also just the people in Australia are incredible. Like Australians are so nice, they're so talkative. I met so many people just at like bus stops, like it was really cool. And yeah, super just cool. The beaches and everything is like pretty close by, so that was super fun also. Yeah.
Very cool. Sounds amazing. Tayson, how about your internship? You were in Madrid.
I everything in my internship module went perfect. Like I miss it so much. Like my actual internship, like my job was my boss was super chill. I had the perfect schedule for me. uh, my job was basically just, I worked at a language school, so I basically just had English conversations with so many people from Madrid. Um, just that was a really that was a learning experience, but it taught me so much and I enjoyed it greatly. And then just about the city, like Madrid was so perfect for me, because it was like the weather was just about like leading into spring when I was there. It was not too hot, not too cold. My apartment was like perfectly set up. My roommates were perfect. I don't think I could say anything bad. Like,
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So great insight into each of your internships, which were very different cities and different experiences. This one is really important. How did you deal with homesickness? And I know it hits people differently. So I'd love, who wants to take this one, and who actually like struggled a bit with homesickness and had to get through that? Lanie?
Yeah,
On that?
I definitely was homesick. It came in waves. It was definitely more on the places when you had downtime. Downtime was hard. Internship was a little bit hard because at that point you're kind of more independent and you're not around your friends all the time, and that was hard. I definitely was better at dealing with homesickness at different points. I think what helped me a lot was getting out and exploring and reaching out to my peers, and they're always there for you. Everyone's going through the same experiences, and like everyone wants to help each other. And so reaching out, sometimes we all just wanted to sit in bed and watch a movie and eat junk food. Sometimes we wanted to go out to eat, and like different things helped us feel less homesick by building that community. But there are going to be really hard days, and I struggled a good amount with being homesick. You kind of just gotta you gotta let it out. You gotta feel your emotions. You gotta cry it out, take your time, and then put yourself back out there and go back out and explore and make the most of everything.
Perfect advice. I love that. We are getting a lot of questions about packing, which is one of my favorite subjects because everyone loves to overpack. So who feels like they did a really good job packing or learned because they did a terrible job, and they want to talk about that in this group? Jenna, you're like lighting up right now.
I honestly, I feel like I did pretty good. I definitely realized, I mean, I kind of overpacked, but I'd say for the most part, I like did pretty well. It is really hard because I was going from two totally different climates. It's summer in Australia and then like super cold and rainy in Paris. So I didn't really know like how to gauge that, I guess. But the best advice I can give you is definitely bring clothes that you can layer and like things that kind of all go together. That was the thing that I found most helpful. And my internship was super casual, luckily, so I didn't have to bring like business clothes. I pretty much could wear like jeans and a t-shirt if I wanted to, so that was nice. But yeah, definitely bringing that. And then I would say pack obviously the essentials of what you need, but don't go overboard, because if you like shopping, you're definitely going to end up buying things. But yeah, I don't know. And packing cubes are a huge help also, for those of you that like to stay organized. That was a huge help for me. But I feel like I did pretty good. Just again, like that tip of like just bringing like basic sort of clothing that all kind of goes together and can fit a lot of different situations, I think really helps. But yeah.
Great advice. Did you pack did you have one rolling suitcase and one backpack, or what did you have, Jenna?
Yeah, so I had like a bigger rolling suitcase, and then I just had like a backpacking pack. If you're like actually the backpacking packs worked really well, especially for small away trips. It's, if any of you are familiar, I'll recommend it. It's the Cotopaxi. I think it's the 35-liter pack, and it has like all these separate compartments for organization, and it was so helpful because I could put my like laptop in there with like a bunch of extra clothes and like different things that I needed for like the plane or like away trips. So yeah, that was that was my key to success. But
Awesome. Yes. Lanie, let's hear from you.
I just want to say, like, I had everything I needed. Getting around and traveling with everything I brought was a pain. I had a big 25-inch suitcase, I had a carry-on suitcase, and I had a backpack. And I was not the only one. And we couldn't fit everything on the buses. And most of the hotels in Europe don't have elevators. So we're like lugging our giant suitcases up the stairs. And then when you get to the hotels, like if there is an elevator, everyone's trying to put their bags in. So I have friends that did everything in one carry-on suitcase and a backpack, and they were fine. Like, I don't know how they did it, but I know me and like some of the girls that had like our 3 different suitcases and then more suitcases once we were shopping. It's just not like, do yourself a favor and bring less. Like, it'll help you get around easier.
That's my favorite words of advice. We will for our group leaving this fall, we'll have more materials and sessions about packing. So we don't need to go too much in the weeds, but that's kind of the biggest thing is like less is more, because you will lug it everywhere. And like Lanie said, and I remember because I was in the European immersion, certain people, if they brought too many bags, like our buses literally couldn't fit all the bags and we'd have to wait and hire another bus and wait for it. And you don't want to be that person that's like, you had too many bags, so the whole group is waiting. So packing is a fun subject. I know it's a lot. It's a lot to try to take on. Jason, anything you wanted to add to that?
Not really. I never really had a problem, but watching the kids that did was like, you really do kind of want to keep it smaller. Like, because the bus thing, I know for my group was a huge problem, and it was, because then eventually, like when the bus fills up, we had to just take like the big suitcases and pull them into the bus, put them on the seats, and it was just like a lot.
Yep, can be avoided. Cool. So more to come on packing in later sessions when we get closer. So let's switch to a new question, and this is how much of the trip, and I think several people have questions about kind of this, how much of the trip is guided, how much free time do you have? And let's tackle that. Who wants to talk a bit about that and how, and when we say trip, we'll refer to that being like the full gap year, not like the European immersion, because obviously it changes. Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, it definitely does change. Because I think language and internship, you kind of have like the same amount of free time because it's just like school and work. You have your set schedule and then you can do whatever you want. But definitely service is the one where it's like it's a lot more structured, I feel like, in that module. Because it is service, so every part of the day is kind of planned, but there was still free and like enough free time for it not to be a problem. I think there's a good amount of both, and I never felt overwhelmed. So, also it was planned very well. Like I always knew what was going to happen, and I never really was kind of confused.
Great.
Which was a good thing.
Did you take advantage of like free time to go, say during language or internship to go visit other countries or anything like that?
Yeah. In Barcelona, I did like 3 weekend trips. And it's just like, it was so easy. I didn't think it was going to be easy, but it was like super simple. So, I also like, even during school, some teachers like for the weekend trips would just let you have the day off, I guess, kind of. You could stay in contact with them, and so it made it really easy to just kind of do what you want if that's what you're looking for. But yeah.
Awesome. Jenna and Lanie, anything to add in terms of people wondering, like, did you feel like you had enough time to, like, Jenna, for example, explore Sydney during your internship or any other?
Yeah. I feel like it was kind of hard during my internship just because I was working like 9 to 5 every day. But my boss was pretty incredible because I felt kind of rude, like asking if I should have the day off. But I think she kind of saw that I was like trying to plan like too much after work. So she was like, if you need a Friday off, like just let me know. And so she was pretty gracious in that way. So I did get a lot of free time to go and do things. And then my internship was kind of funky, so I ended up having like a few more days off than normal just because of scheduling things. But I felt like I had enough time. And the thing is like kind of like what we're talking about is like a month is a long time, but it's not at the same time. Like you definitely want to seize all of your free time to do everything that you do want to see. Cause I felt like towards the end of each module, I was like, wow, I haven't seen like so many like touristy places, or I haven't done this yet. So when you do have free time, definitely use it wisely. Cause towards the end, you're going to definitely regret it if you don't. So yeah.
Great. Let's see. We have a question. What is something that you wish you knew starting out? Who wants to take this?
One thing I could say is that I was very worried about, like, I think my biggest fear going onto my gap year was the people I was going to be with. I was like, it's kind of like joining a new school. It's like, are they going to like me? But definitely coming out, I can say, like, it is a big deal that we all decided to do that, because just that as what we had in common together was enough to be like some of my best friends I've met through this gap year. Like, definitely I could say like I've seen a lot of cool places on this gap year, but my favorite part of it was just all the people I met. So
Jenna and Lanie, how would you, I find I was actually just doing interviews with all of the students that recently returned, and that is a constant theme, that fear of the unknown, of who you're going to be with and all that. How, along with what Tayson's saying, how do you guys feel? Like, were you afraid going in, and how were those fears met when you met your group?
I definitely, like, similar to what Tayson was saying, was a little bit nervous. We had a lot of us found each other on Instagram and created like a Snapchat group, so we had a little bit of like knowledge of who everyone was, but obviously you're not the same as you are on social media. So I think I definitely was like trying to suss out, like, oh my gosh, like, do I have anything in common with these people and these people? And then when you get there the first day, it's very overwhelming. So I think people are just trying to like get comfortable and make connections, and it's very overwhelming. And I think just knowing that like it's gonna settle down and you are gonna have genuine real conversations with everyone and form these bonds, like the first couple of days it's gonna be awkward, not every, like, you're gonna know people but not know them. And yeah, like Tayson was saying, it's like some of my best friends are from the gap year. I'm like, I got home a year ago, I think, and I'm still in contact with probably 80% of them. Like, you're all going to be so different, but the thing that like is so similar, that you all want to be on this trip, it like keeps you like connected, and you all will become family.
Yeah. And then for me, like, I wasn't too nervous going into it just because I don't know, I felt really in my element. Like, I'm a pretty social creature by nature, but definitely like making kind of figuring out like who you're traveling with through like Snapchat groups, and that was also really helpful for packing too. I will say that is kind of creating that group chat before, so you can kind of get a gauge of like how everyone is feeling and what they're bringing and stuff. That was helpful. And yeah, my cohort and I, like a lot of people in it, like got super close, and we were actually supposed to be having a little reunion at the beginning of May, but Corona happened, so that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I definitely really, that was my favorite part, was just all the people that I met. And yeah, it's super fun.
Amazing. It's so fun to see how close all the different cohorts are. You guys really are like families to each other. It's really special. Switching to question about, if you were in an area where you weren't fluent in the language, which I'm sure came up a lot of times, did you feel like you were still able to get around okay? Who wants to take that?
I definitely was not fluent in Spanish when I was in Costa Rica. I knew enough to kind of get my point across. And I was actually with friends that were a little more fluent than me, so that definitely helped. And the area I was in was there's a lot of tourism there, so a lot of people knew English. I did in English because I wanted to. That was like the point of being there. But if I didn't know a word, I could switch over to English, as well as like having access to your phone really helps, and having that like translation. Um, Pretty manageable, I'd say, for most of the places you'll be going. A lot of people do know English.
Yeah, I think like hand gestures, Google Translate all become your friends, right? For all that. Everyone finds a way to get by. What are the flights like? Are you ever alone without someone besides internships? Or are you ever like completely on your own? Who wants to take that? Tayson, you were already.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was ever alone. And if I was worried about being alone, I don't think I ever was. Like uh I always had like my friends around me first, but then also gap year people or tour guides just always there dropping you off at the airport or picking you up from the airport. In Australia and New Zealand, immersion, we had a lot of flights and we all did those together. So it was easy. I never really was alone.
Great. Yeah, we try to book everyone on flights together, and then anytime someone happens to be going to a module alone, which I don't think will be happening at all this fall either, we're always looking at where the people are requesting to go. We'll talk to them before they even travel to that place to say like, hey, you're the only person that wants to go to X. Like, are you still interested, and would you rather move? So that shouldn't be happening to anyone actually in this upcoming group. But yeah, so we don't ever try to put anyone alone, and you'd certainly know if you approve that.
Yeah, I will say I was alone flying from Paris to Sydney just because out of my group that's what I chose. But I definitely felt like after you kind of are able to navigate around a city and stuff, like navigating an airport is a piece of cake, and I felt super confident going into it. So it wasn't a huge deal for me being by myself in that situation. So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, definitely there is a possibility you fly alone. So great. Thank you for answering that. Let's see. Did any of you guys know anyone on the gap year before you started? Not like personally, besides maybe connecting on like what you said, Lanie, on Instagram or something like that, or Snapchat. And I know I think someone had asked when our cohorts will get to meet. So in the past, we've done it much closer to departure. We're actually going to open up the groups earlier this year. So it will be in May, where you'll get to all meet each other on, we do a Facebook group, and then I know the groups usually take it to, find each other on Instagram and obviously Snapchat and whatever. So that will be coming up soonish. Let's see. We also have, did any of you attend the college app seminar? Nope. Okay. So we'll skip that question, but we can talk, if you have college app seminar questions, we can obviously talk to you about them offline. Let's see, what was the most difficult thing to get used to? Who wants to take that?
I think definitely the hardest part of my entire gap year, and it wasn't even that bad, but going from European immersion to the language school, and because over those 2 weeks you strangely get connected to people, and then when language starts and it's just you and your roommate, and then you are like alone for the first time, it was like weird not having a bunch of other roommates, or having my friends like down the hall. But I definitely got through it because I still had friends in the city and there was the school, but that was definitely difficult.
Yeah, definitely an adjustment. Anything else that stands out for either Lanie or Jenna that was really hard to get used to for you?
I think, for me, mine was definitely when I was living with my host well, I just lived with a host mom, but she spoke English, which was nice, but she really pushed that we were only going to speak French whenever we stepped foot into the house. And like all of my roommates, like in my host family, they all spoke Spanish and English pretty much. So we would all communicate with each other through that. So getting into that habit of only speaking French was definitely difficult for me to adjust to, just because it's a new sort of situation. But it ended up being a super cool period of growth for me also. So yeah.
That one comes up. I think it's so hard, especially if you can lean on that English because a roommate speaks English or something. It's so hard to push yourself to like, nope, I came here to learn French.
Yeah.
I'm gonna force myself to try. It can be really hard. Along those lines, just a question on like what was a really difficult thing for you if it wasn't that. Maybe Lanie, if you have anything else, and is there anything you regret?
I guess I think something that was like hard to get used to and something I regret is like I definitely experienced FOMO, like fear of missing out, and I was definitely like pushing myself sometimes harder than I should have to like be engaged and go out and go and explore. And there's sometimes where I was kind of sheltering myself too much and staying in and trying to recharge and like isolating because I was so overwhelmed or homesick, and regretting like not going and doing this extra bike tour my friends had planned or like whatever it is. I think it's really hard to find balance and always wishing you did the opposite of what you did. And but I think overall I definitely wish I got out more, and like I know I needed to recharge and you do need that self-care time, but I think I definitely like it would have been worth it to go the extra mile.
Yeah, great piece of advice there. It's really hard to find that balance and really important too. Switching gears, what was the best food you had while you were abroad?
That's really hard. I would say for me, I mean, I was really fortunate because my host family's apartment in Paris was right down the street from a boulangerie. So like the pastries in France are obviously just impeccable. I loved it. Also my host mom's cooking was pretty spot on. But I guess I really also liked the paella in Spain, but I don't know. I liked everything. Food is just my thing. So like I was having a good time. But
Lanie or Tayson, do you have anything you want to add?
All the food in Thailand was incredible. Like I could not say a bad thing. And you're in the cities a lot. And they have these like night markets where they have all like the local food. And like if you're going to Thailand, you have to get the mango sticky rice. That's my favorite. It's so good.
Pro tip, I love it. Awesome. Tayson, you have any food that really
I still miss my host mom's cooking in Barcelona. But I think everywhere I had something that was just so like breathtaking. Like Costa Rica, just everything was so good. I think the only place I had problems was internship because you have to cook yourself. So that was I think everywhere was good.
awesome? So actually, speaking of internships and like living by yourself, living on your own, Shani wants to know what was it like living by yourself?
I guess for me, so when I went to Sydney, we had an odd number of people that were in our group, so I was in an apartment completely by myself. I didn't have a roommate at all, and I actually really liked that just because that's just like my thing. But it was like it was different because you go from like the European immersion and then your host families are different things and you're always around people, and so like living with like either yourself or just one other person is kind of a different adjustment because it's kind of like it does feel a little lonely at times, but for me it was really nice. Like it was just a really nice break to kind of just be with myself and really process everything that had been going on over the past few months. But yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. And yeah, you definitely want to learn how to cook or at least watch some videos before you go. That helps a lot. But I really liked it, especially after coming from living with so many people and being around people all the time. It was really nice. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think learning a little bit of cooking skills could help. Actually, quarantining is a great opportunity to practice cooking. Your family may appreciate that. Who did a lot of traveling on their weekends? Caitlin says, what were weekends like while traveling?
I did a good amount of extra traveling. During my language, I had Fridays class, so because my scheduling, so we did a couple group road trips where we went to Monteverde and we stayed in a hostel and we went in like zip lining and hiking. And then we did one where we rented an Airbnb a couple miles up the beach and had our own kitchen. So we did some cooking and we had some Netflix marathons and hot showers, which was nice for a change. And then during my internship, my internship actually, like one of the first things they said to me was, we want you to take Fridays off, like a couple of them at least, like you're here to get to know Ireland, you're here to do travel, like we don't want you stuck in your office, like in the office all the time. So they were really pushing that, which I was really grateful for. So I visited some of my fellow Gappers in Milan and stayed with them for a weekend. I went to Iceland with one of my friends that was also in Dublin. And then one of the weekends, my family came out for St. Patrick's Day. So we did like the parade and we went to Northern Ireland and like Belfast, which was really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of students, it seems like, I think you guys can obviously speak to this, but kind of just, combine with each other and join up to do trips together. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Especially if you're in Europe, it's so easy to grab a bus, grab a train pass, and hop over to another country. It's like easier than within the US. So, cool. Let's talk about a couple of things actually here that I want to touch on. So we have a question of, what did you do to help pay for the gap year semester? Did anyone help the family contribute that wants to talk about that?
For me, my parents obviously contributed like a big amount, but the way we split it up was they paid for 3/4 of it and then I'm paying for the rest. And then I just pretty much worked the entire summer and saved up as much as I could in order to do that. So I guess that's how I went about that. But yeah.
Great. Yeah. And then along the same lines with just financing is recommendations for spending money. And I know this is a big question, and I think it can vary so much because, as we talked about a little bit earlier, some people are big shoppers and some are really good with budgeting. So who wants to talk a bit about how much did you budget? I know it's going to be varied.
I didn't budget very well. It was it was not great. I came home very, very broke, but I mean, it was worth it. I spent money on extra excursions and extra travel, like experiences I'm never going to forget. I very much tried to limit like shopping, except in Thailand. I did like all my Christmas shopping right before I went home, which was easy because it's pretty inexpensive. Budgeting, like my dad tried to help me. I know there's apps, I know there's like rules about like set like a certain amount for like every week. I didn't do that, but like I recommend you guys try that out.
I know. Yeah, Tayson, let's hear it.
I was kind of like the opposite in that I did like spending money was kind of hard for me to do because I felt like I had to have everything planned out, even though I really didn't do a good job of that. But I think worrying about money wasn't something I should have done. Like that's kind of something I regret, especially when it came to like going on excursions or doing extra things. Like I missed out, especially like in Barcelona, there was a big uh, football game, and a lot of people went, but the tickets were so expensive, so I opted out. But like I regret that so much because like in the end, it definitely would have been worth it. So I kind of needed to learn to spend money.
Also an interesting viewpoint. Did any of you feel like one module was, I mean, I would imagine internship was the most expensive because that's when you're actually paying for all your meals and whatnot. That's when you budgeted the most amount. Would that be fair for all of you? Yep. Okay. For the people asking about budgeting, we've come up with, and it's actually based on alumni advice, budgeting tips, and they vary per module. And then of course you have different cities. So Thailand is going to be very different from Tokyo or Sydney. Some cities, obviously the cost of living and food and whatnot is a lot more expensive. So it can be a tricky question to answer in one go. But we have some guides about that, and we'll talk more about that later in pre-departure. So we have, how proficient are you in the language you learn? So Jenna, let's hear it from you in your French speaking skills.
Yeah, so going into it, I already took 1 through AP French in high school. So I was already pretty, well, not pretty, I was like semi-proficient or whatever. So I got placed in like a B1 class, which is like middle high-ish. And I definitely would say that what we learn in the States for language is completely different from like conversational French. And so that, like, as far as like just conversational French goes, I guess, I definitely would say I improved, and I was able by the end of it to sound like my accent, sound more like a fluent French speaker. And I was like, it was so much easier to get around and to communicate my needs like with my host family and my teachers and stuff. So I would say I'm more proficient in it than I was before, for sure. Yeah.
Great. And Lanie and Tayson, did either of you start at the kind of A1, which is the first level in your languages?
I was on A2, but
A2, okay. And how do you feel like you improved in Spanish?
definitely a lot, but it was kind of hard to keep it, I think, even though all my modules were in Spanish places. Definitely it's like you're gonna get out of it what you put into it, and so you should put all of it into it.
Yeah.
Like
it goes back to like, you have to force yourself to attempt everything in Spanish, even though you maybe can get by with your English. If you don't try, like, it's not going to improve. But that's what the school is all about, and that's why the teachers don't speak to you in English and all of that. But I know it can be a challenge. How did you know which locations you wanted to choose? Who wants to pick that or take that question?
I was pretty specific how I wanted to do it. There were so many options, and I think that was really hard. But before my gap year, I was afraid of big cities, like even Boston, which isn't very big. But I was just a little bit like, that's a lot of cars, that's a lot of traffic, like, I don't know. So I wanted a Spanish speaking because I wanted to continue my Spanish, but I was afraid of Barcelona and Madrid. So I chose Costa Rica. And so that got me that one. And then Thailand, I was between Costa Rica again and Thailand because I was like turtles or elephants. And then I was like, okay, well, let me try to get 3 different places. So I chose Thailand because I really wanted like the environmental piece and the elephants and the teaching, that all appealed to me. And then for my internship, I wanted a small city, small as possible. And I wasn't sure my Spanish was going to be super proficient, so I definitely took the safe route with Dublin. But also Dublin had nonprofit, which is what I wanted to do for my internship. So it all worked out, and I'm super happy with all the locations I chose.
Great. Thanks for walking us through that. I think, you can narrow down a lot of your different like needs, what you're looking for. And obviously we're happy to help you. Your advisor or whoever you've been working with at Gap Year is happy to talk you through what you're looking for. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to add to choices, or anything that was super important in how they chose? Okay. What was the process like before the gap year even started, like getting visas and all of that? Who wants to take that? And I can talk about visas, but who wants to talk about kind of pre-departure, what that was like for you?
I'd say for me, it went pretty smoothly. The visa for Australia was, it was kind of a pain because for whatever reason, like when I went to apply, there was something that happened and they like weren't taking them or something. So then I had to like fill out all the paperwork and stuff again. But it's really not that hard. It's just kind of scanning in like your like legal documents and stuff, and then saying like how long you're going to be there and stuff. So I honestly didn't think it was that big of a deal. But it does kind of take a little collecting all of your things. That was kind of the thing that took the longest. But for me personally, I'd say it was pretty easy and not super stressful. So yeah.
Yeah, I think probably you guys can answer this, but is the biggest stressors like packing, and then yeah, visas is a pain, I will absolutely say, but otherwise packing is probably the most obvious, right? I mean, obviously saving money and all that too, but just talking about visas, EF will help you get your visas and send your instructions. We don't do that until much later. It will look like more like July. And it's going to be limited countries that you'll need visas for. But yes, internship in Sydney is one of them. It changes. We reevaluate every single year which places we need visas for. And then we let the students know. You can't really apply for visas super far in advance anyways. So right now we're not even in that window. But we will be communicating all of that and in touch with how to do it. And we try to make it as seamless as possible, but some of them are tricky. Visas are just moving targets. They're tough. They're a pain for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. So that is that. Did any of you guys get scholarships for your GAP program, either from us or from elsewhere?
I got one. I can't remember the name at all.
But from EF, or was it from another organization?
A blog. It was from oh my gosh. Oh, the Travel Access Program.
Travel Access Project. Okay, cool.
I got one of those, and they gave me like a suitcase with it. So
cool. So did you get it from writing a blog post, or how did you win that?
So I had to do like 6 different little like tiny essay type questions.
Yep.
And then it was to get past the first step, and then I had just an interview, and then
great. So for those of you wondering, that's Travel Access Project, I believe is the name, and they sponsor, they do some gap year scholarships. I believe the Gap Year Association writes about it. You can also just Google Travel Access Project and probably find the instructions to apply. And then EF Gap Year, we also award up to $50,000 a year in scholarships too. So if you have questions, we can answer those, or Rebecca can type them too about that. We only have a couple more questions. You guys have crushed it answering them, crushed it on asking questions. So this has been great. Good job all around. Let's see. So
Katie, I have a quick question.
Yeah, what's up?
Are you guys still doing the SNHU coursework?
We are, yes.
Something I want to point out with that is if you do the SNHU, which I did, it allowed my family to use like my college savings plan that like for college, because it was for education purposes. So it helped us pay for the gap year because I was taking coursework. And actually the coursework was really helpful and transferred to my college too.
Amazing. Thank you, Lanie. That's a great point. We do have several students that use their 529 education fund because they're doing the college credit option. So if you have specific questions on how to enroll in all of that, we can let you know. But that is a great point. Thank you. So our next question from Caitlin, during European immersion, is everyone together like all gap year students? Who wants to take it?
I know for me, we were split into 2 groups, but I think I had a big cohort. but I still feel like I did get to see the other kids.
Yep. So for depending on which program you're in, sometimes so the max size in one cohort can be like 45. So if it's bigger than that, we split into multiple, but you're basically kind of doing a parallel European immersion together. So you would, Tayson, you probably had like some meals with the other group, or you'd see them in free time or whatever. And then the Australia tour you did in reverse, so you weren't in the same places as each other, right? And that's like a capacity thing as well. And it's not as fun to travel with 80 to 100 people at once, trying to wait in lines and things like that. So we do break it down to a smaller group to make it manageable. But trying to think, Lanie, your group was the same, right?
No, we were all together, but we traveled separately than the semester kids. So we met everyone during orientation, but then broke off, traveled parallel in Europe.
Yep, exactly. Cool. Great question. I think that is it for our questions. I want to thank everyone for attending and asking these great questions. It's awesome to hear from you, hear what you're, what everyone's curious about right now. Hopefully everyone is excited. I know we have several months to go and still have some quarantining left to do, but I also just want to thank Jenna, Lanie, Tayson. Thank you guys so much. I know I found this helpful. I think our students have as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We will send out the recording for this webinar for everyone that attended tonight. And then of course, for future, for students that couldn't make it, we'll send it around tomorrow. So feel free to rewatch. And thank you all so much. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Take care.